This video is going to be an introduction to the basic principles of weight training. In this video, we'll quickly cover what repetitions are, how sets are made up, how supersets are conducted, rest periods, and the tempo of your lifts. So, dive straight in. A repetition is the term used for one movement pattern of an exercise. So if you're doing a bench press, one movement coming down and back up. A set is classified as a group of repetitions. So if your workout sheet said a set of 8 to 10 repetitions, means you do 8 to 10 repetitions depending on what you can achieve in that round. And then once you achieve that, that's the end of the set. Now, making sure when you're conducting a set, you can complete those repetitions in a single hit. So it's 8 to 10 repetitions, one after the other all the way through, without additional rest periods chucked in between. Unless, of course, your program says otherwise. At the end of a set, that's when you conduct your rest. Now, what I recommend is at least 60 seconds. That should be a minimum rest period. And anything up to that 2 to 2.5 minutes. The goal of a rest is to make sure you're recovered enough before you conduct the next set. So if you're doing a single exercise in a set, like for example the bench press, hit one set of 10 repetitions, rest long enough so make sure the next time you come into the next set, it doesn't drop off incredibly due to your inability to recover from the previous set. So hypothetically, hit a set of bench press, do a set of 10, try to get back in 30 seconds later, and all of a sudden you can only hit a set of 5, you haven't rested long enough. You want to make sure you're rested long enough to be ready for another set without resting too long. So if you piss around your phone for 5 minutes, you can start to cool down, and that can compromise your next set as well. So that 60 seconds minimum to about 2.5 minutes is a good ballpark figure, depending on the exercise. Rests and sets start to change a little bit if you're conducting a superset. Quite commonly in any program I prescribe, I like to put in supersets. It's just a very time-efficient way of training. So the concept of rest changes then. So for example, you conduct your bench press, and then you might come into an exercise such as the bent over row. You'll do a set of the bench press, rest long enough to let your heart rate drop down and breathing come right. Conduct the set of the bent over row, do the same thing, let the heart rate drop down, and then come back to another set of the bench press. So you're pairing 2 exercises up. This is when quite typically you're going to get at least that 60 seconds to a 2 minutes rest between 2 rounds of the bench press. But you want to make sure you're recovered enough between those 2 rounds. So don't go straight from the bench press, rush over to the bent over row, do that, rush back. You're not going to be recovered between each round, and it is going to compromise your sets. The next thing to take into account is the speed of your lifts. I personally like to conduct everything at a slower tempo. It's a lot safer on the joints, and the research shows there's no real difference between a fast lifting speed and a slow lifting speed. If you're doing something quite fast, you have the potential of increasing the risk of injury. So the way I see it, there's no potential net gain from doing things fast, but you have the possibility of injury prevention by lifting things slow. I like to lift things on a slower pace. So if you're doing a bench press, it'd be like a 2 to 3 second movement coming down, and about a 2 second movement pattern coming back up. Nice, slow and controlled, keeps the lift nice and safe, while still achieving that muscle growth. Next thing to look at is how hard to push each set. Now there's a thing called the proximity to failure, or repetitions reserve, or a few other terms used for it, but basically what it's looking at is how many more repetitions could you have achieved at the end of a set? Or have you pushed that set all the way to complete failure? So if you conduct a bench press and you get to a set of 10 for your main rounds, and you could have potentially done 15 repetitions, quite possibly leaving far too much in the tank. You want to get to the end of a set and feel like you could maybe do 1 to 2 more repetitions, unless of course your program says otherwise. You're going to push around hard, but not to the point of failure, making sure you're resting long enough between each set to make sure the volume isn't compromised, making sure you're lifting at a slow, controlled speed to ensure the safety of your joints. Those key principles there will set you up for a good, solid foundation for all of your training.